Almost all of the recent mass murders in this country have been committed with high-capacity, rapid-firing weapons. If they were not available to the perpetrators, the number of people killed would have been far less, approaching zero in some cases. Good morning. I'm Ed James, and this is Black Almanac. We should follow a stereo example and quickly move to ban automatic and semi-automatic weapons, not just bump stock devices that can be converted to the other. Political analyst Dr. Lawrence Miller joined today's discourse with expert analysis and insight. Dr. Miller, you've been away for a little while.
Yes.
But the swamp keeps getting sloshier and sloshier.
That's true. Certainly not being drained.
No, not at all.
Sure.
And then, if we talk about gun control for a few minutes, it seems like we're getting different reports now from what we originally heard, because the police response, not that it could have made too much of a difference, but was rather slow.
Yes, yes. And first and foremost, I want to thank God for the opportunity to be on your program once again.
We appreciate having you, and our viewers do.
Yes. And so as far as this issue of gun control is concerned, you know, with the tragic event that took place in Las Vegas, where 58 people lost their lives, it appears that always when we have these types of situations, there is this hue and cry about guns, but it seems like nothing ever gets done. There's no legislation that comes behind it. And that, to me, speaks to a certain amount of values that we have revolving around it, because even though we have these different issues that we say that we're all for, when I say all for, I mean the polls show close to 90% of the people want to have the loopholes closed revolving around background checks. Nothing happens.
The real problem is we don't have politicians with backbone.
That is true.
Yeah, because the people want to change,
Yes.
but they can't vote.
No.
And the NRA, National Rifle Association, continues to do what it does and bring money to politicians, and they will say something and then turn their heads.
No question. One of the things that happened right after this was that Paul Ryan came forward, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and said that maybe we ought to look at this bump stock. You know, this bump stock is supposed to be this apparatus that will make a semi-automatic gun an automatic gun. And the NRA, they were quiet for a little while, didn't say anything, but they said, yeah, you should take a look at it. But then he flipped. He came back and said, I'm talking about Paul Ryan now, after the, you know, the NRA, you know, had some reservations about the issue.
After one of his major funders.
Exactly. He goes ahead now and says, no, we shouldn't do it in terms of the Congress. It should be a regulation that the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency should be looking at in terms of going ahead and stopping this. And
then several of the politicians said, this is not the time to talk about that.
Exactly.
You know, families are grieving. We should, well, families would feel better. I would, if I had lost someone.
Yes.
That you do talk about it and getting ready to do something.
Yes.
And when one of their own was lost at the ball game, you know, the Capitol baseball game.
Yeah, Stephen Solis.
Yeah, was shot. And then you go back further, when one the Congress lady was having a town hall, and
Yes.
and she almost died.
Yes, Gabby Giffords.
Yeah, they always say, we'll talk about it, but now is not the time.
If you have a situation where these type of things happen over and over and over and over again, at some point, you have to talk about it. I mean, it's happening to your people. There was a statistic talking about how much this happens in the United States in terms of affecting hundreds of people since the time of the shooting of our children in Connecticut, where 20 young people were killed. And if you're not going to do anything when your babies are being shot, why would the
Like
world expect?
Newtown, the
Yeah,
school?
Newtown, yes, the school in Connecticut. What's going to motivate you to move? What does it take?
If you could cut off the money stream, and they all got their hands out, so
Yeah, that's true.
no
Very
hands
true.
are clean.
None.
Around 30 days to the end of session to be able to get a major bill passed. And they say, the president and his group
Yes.
say that they should do tax reform. Now, that sounds good,
Yes.
but they say they don't care if they don't have the Democrats because they can do it through reconciliation. However, with reconciliation, you better have every Republican on, and you can't lose but two.
All right.
Where do you see that going?
Nowhere. I mean, come on. Think about it.
Dr. Miller.
The top guy, right? Senator Bob Corker. He had this run-in with Trump, okay, where Trump tweeted some negative things about him, and he had a classic comeback in terms of saying that the White House has become an adult daycare center.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, somebody has missed their shift. This person said that not one dime can be added to the deficit. Okay, so the bill that they have been proposing, as far as tax cut is concerned, does do that. It does nothing to go ahead and as the Republicans for the 8 years that President Obama was in, talking about reducing the debt, which is over $20 trillion. They've put nothing forward that is going to go ahead in the short term address that particular issue. As a matter of fact, it's going to push it out further. So if this individual, who is one of the key individuals as far as getting this type of legislation passed, as you said, they're going to need at least 50, and they have 52. So they lose 3, okay, they're in trouble. So you might count him as one. Then John McCain has had a continuing issue with how they've done things. They've conducted business in the Senate. And then you have Susan Collins, who is really fed up. And Susan Collins is the senator from Maine, who's talking about running for governor of Maine.
You also have the senator from Alaska.
Yes, Lisa Murkowski. Now, the thing here is that if you lose those senators, where is that bill going to go? You're going to have to get some Democrats. And they have already said that they do not want to do what the Republicans are advertising that they want to do. So that's why I said unequivocally, I don't think it's going anywhere. It's not going to pass muster in the Senate.
Well, when you lie all the time, and the president appears to be getting his lie ready, and going to put it all on the senator from Tennessee, who he says is just upset because he wouldn't let him become Secretary of State.
There's always a personal thing with him. And he always has to get in the last word talking about Trump. And the thing here is that those things are irrelevant. It is the policy and the issues that affect the everyday lives of human beings in this country that is important. And when you have people in your own party who are making these disparaging remarks about you, it's very difficult because they put themselves out on the line. And then even think about the Democrats, too, who are not in this party. One time he's talking about DACA as a clean, the bill revolving around those who've been born here in the United States. Not born in the United States, I'm sorry.
As a clean bill.
As a clean bill, yes. These people who were brought here in the United States when they were young, babies. And he now is saying that part of that bill has to include funds for the wall, for this wall he wants to build on the Mexican border.
And he knows well that the Democrats are not going to go for that.
Exactly, because he had a meeting with Nancy and Chuck. How he likes to talk about people in very personal terms, and supposedly had this deal, and now he's backtracking on it. So how can you trust the guy?
You can't. For example, last week, his vice president went to Puerto Rico, was with the governor, and even the mayor, who Trump loves to hate, of San Juan,
Cruz,
and the governor of Puerto Rico, and said, "We will be there for you."
Right.
We, meaning his administration, are not going to go away.
Right.
Then, 3 days later, Trump says, "We can't do all this for Puerto Rico. We can't leave our first responders, our military, and our folk there forever."
Right.
It's interesting. What's the our and what's the we and who's the you? The Puerto Rican folk who are dying are the you or them, but we can't do that for you American citizens.
Right.
He has never said in a crisis time, like in Texas, that we are spending too much.
Too much time there.
Too much time.
Yeah.
We can't commit the resources.
Can't commit the resources. Nor here in Florida. When we had Irma, you didn't hear him say that.
And I still believe that, unfortunately, until Hillary said, send the ship, the hospital ship,
Yes.
that can take 1,000 people on, beds for 1,000 people on, I think it's the Hope,
Yes.
they call the ship. He didn't mention that at all.
No.
And didn't know any, and it tells me he didn't know anything about it.
No.
And those in the administration who could tell him, I think they're tired of him, and they want to see him fail.
Yes. And I think that you're hitting the nail on the head as far as how people view this president within his own administration. Case in point, a story came out about Rex Tillerson at a meeting allegedly calling the president a moron. Now, I've never heard that term being used in any of the presidents by their staff, even allegedly, okay, in my lifetime here in the United States. So it tells you the level of frustration that people have in just dealing with him. I mean, he doesn't understand government at all.
Why wouldn't Tillerson become extremely frustrated? Tillerson would be upset and call him that, because what does he do? Tillerson goes over to China, works hard, since we're saying we, meaning America, need China to carry our water.
Yes.
And deal with North Korea.
Yes.
And appeared to be, in his mind, making some progress.
Exactly. Direct talks.
Direct talks. And then Trump says, why is he wasting his time with him? Now, how can anyone accept Tillerson as being a Secretary of State and believe that he can speak for the administration
Yes.
when the president cuts you down right after it?
Exactly. And then in some meeting that he had in the White House, say this is just the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
What are people supposed to make out of that? His own staff doesn't know what to make out of that.
He says, but you'll find out.
But you'll find out.
Well, I guess everybody will find out.
What is this, a reality show? You got to tune in next week to find out what the man is thinking? He has the lives of people here in the United States and around the world in his hands. And they're supposed to what, tune in next week? Give me a break. This is a situation where we need some clarity, okay? We need you to speak to the people and let us know, what is your policy revolving around them other than just a back and forth with the president of North Korea?
It's also interesting that there is another case with his son-in-law. I thought that the potential good work that Tillerson could do, you know, because of his background as Secretary of State
Yes.
and leading a corporation that's all over the world, was doomed from the beginning when he decided and says, my son-in-law will take care of Israel in the Middle East.
Right.
Well, since the story came out that the son-in-law company is bankrupt almost, and he's trying to borrow money from the Russian banks, we haven't heard from the son-in-law in at least almost a month.
That's absolutely true. And in terms of where these investigations, both in the House and in the Senate, are going, we need to be brought up to date as far as those things are concerned, too. I'm talking about the American people. These Russian investigations, just think about it, what they've done. They have interfered with our election and used social media to go ahead and ferment division among Americans, right? Black Lives Matter. They went ahead and, talking about the Russian hackers, they went ahead and put some false information out there about Black Lives Matters, gets people all ginned up revolving around it, and here it is, right? People looking at the election either are not going to come out to vote because of the frustration that is involved with it, or, right, they're going to look for this strong man to go ahead and put the world back in place. So they interfere with our elections, and this man is talking about Trump, is very much so afraid to say anything about Russia and put any sanctions against them in terms of what they have done.
Sessions is now directing the FBI. They have a special name for it. Sounds like cantaloupe of back in the civil days.
COINTELPRO.
He's directed a group to start looking at Black Lives Matter in organizations like that.
Yes.
Now, I've never seen anybody attribute Black Lives Matter to walking around with burning lanterns. I've never heard anyone contribute accurately to Black Lives Matter that they were saying the Jews will not replace us.
Right.
I've never heard anyone contributing to Black Lives Matter, blood and soil. So what are we going to do now? We're going to have another trying to start a race war.
Well, the thing here is that, think about it. While these things that you're talking about is happening with the Sessions Justice Department, he's not only doing that, he's also taking to task schools like Harvard University for their affirmative action programs. So while Trump is distracting people with all this about the NFL and the national anthem and the sitting and standing revolving around it and our flag, his Justice Department is taking all these steps to go ahead and bring their conservative agenda to fruition. And part of that conservative agenda is to dismantle any kind of diversity initiatives at the higher education level. It is to go ahead and destroy any kind of progressive movement and to, at the same time, deal with voter fraud so that you have less people being able to go to the polls where now a minority of people, okay, are in control of our government. Because again, remember, Donald Trump did not win the popular vote.
That's
so a minority of people are now in control of our government by using subterfuge and distraction and division to make sure that people who may be against their agenda are not coming out to vote.
What was Jerry Jones doing a couple of weeks ago when he stood on the sidelines with his team protesting,
Yes.
doing the national anthem? And now Jerry has shown a different set of colors. It's like when the Army marched through a different community or a different country, you have the flag, their flag in your back pocket, and you pull that flag out. and now Jerry Jones is talking like the slave owner.
And you know,
His team,
yeah,
that he will bench them
right.
if they don't stand for the national anthem.
Exactly.
Or if you know you're not going to stand, call me in advance so I won't pay you.
Right.
Because apparently there's a regulation that says if you're not there, not if you're not in the game, but if you're not there prepared to play, that you can't get a paycheck.
Yeah. And you know, the thing here is, like I said, Trump used that to distract from his failures revolving around repeal and replace of Obamacare and all trying to get this tax cut through and all this other business, right? Keep that in the forefront of his the people who support him. Keep that in front of their face so that they feel that he's doing something, okay? The thing here is, when I hear stuff like that, it challenges the patriotism, especially of these players, most of whom are African American. And knowing that the African American population of the United States is 12% of the overall population, yet we are 17% of active duty military of the United States.
Which leads me to talk about the double V. And as a New Yorker, you know the double V.
Exactly.
During World War II.
Exactly. Victory over there and victory at home.
Victory at home and victory abroad. And we were fighting for a victory that we didn't enjoy.
Exactly.
And there was a point when they were bringing German prisoners on the car and feeding them, and the black soldiers had to be in another car.
They had to be in another car. Some of these soldiers, because they had their uniforms on, were tortured or lynched. You know, see, people talk about, oh, we'll get over slavery. Well, we've gone through not only just slavery, but Jim Crow and discrimination and lynching. Sometimes, as I said, with that same uniform on, fighting for the United States. Okay, one of the first persons to die for this country in terms of the revolution was Crispus Attucks, a black man. Okay, and if you have
in Boston Harbor.
In Boston Harbor.
When you're going to the Boston Tea Party.
Protesting. Okay. Not saying
for everybody.
For everybody.
Because more white folks were free then than black folk.
Exactly. So here it is, we come to 2017, and the patriotism of African Americans are being challenged because we say that we're protesting again because of police brutality, because people are being shot in the back.
We can't close this program today without talking about the national anthem. Francis Scott Key,
Yes.
the national anthem. He was a slaveholder. And the third stanza, which nobody sings,
Right.
talks about slaves.
Yes, it does.
And they will not make it.
Right. And the fact of the matter is, yes, he talked about slaves because slaves were offered freedom by the British. Okay? The other point about this, as far as Francis Scott Key is concerned, is that Francis Scott Key, is very ironic that we're talking about this, especially in light of the First Amendment. Francis Scott Key brought a case. He was a U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia against Reuben Crandall for sedition because he was an abolitionist trying to free slaves. And he had pamphlets that he was distributing to people about ending slavery. So this same person that we're talking about who wrote this poem, because that's what it started out as a poem, the defense of Fort McHenry, is the same person who was a slaveholder and fought against the First Amendment itself as far as a case revolving around the freeing of people who are enslaved within the United States. So the thing here to me is, yes, the national anthem should be and is important, but no flag or no anthem should be more important than the people it represents.
With that, we're going to close this program. But you got to come back next week because there's a whole lot more we need to do.
Yes.
And as always, have a great day, Suncoast, if you can. The Newtown Farmers Market presents Big Mama's Collard Greens Festival, Cajun, Creole, Southern, and Caribbean-style foods, October 21st, 2017, 12 noon to 6 p.m., Robert L. Taylor Community Complex, 1845 John River Street, Sarasota, Florida. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated presents a community health fair, where Robert L. Taylor Community Complex, 1845 34th Street, Sarasota, Florida, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., featuring health screenings, vision, dental, glucose, blood pressure, HIV flu shots. Must be 18 years of age and bring an insurance card for your flu shot, breast self-exam, fitness, and nutrition. Free food, music, and raffles.